Hello, welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast tonight. Tonight we have an amazing guest who travels the world, and she has a world story that needs a little warning with this. As many of you have probably seen in the posts, we will be talking about a very challenging topic about sex trafficking, and we wanted you to know upfront. But before we start talking to her, we're going to jump into this. I'm April Tribe Juke. Welcome to the Beacon of Light podcast. I believe we are all made with light, and light is hope. This podcast brings authors who write stories of hope to all of you. Your journey to be inspired and amplified by these stories starts now. And we're back. Welcome, Miss Marci. Thank you so much for being here tonight. And Marci, for our audience, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I'm a global nomad. I've been living abroad. It started in my dreams when I was 9 years old. I fell in love with France and the French language and culture. And I went home that day from school and I told my mom, I'm going to live in France one day. It's like I caught my dream and I never let it go. And I started studying French to be a French teacher, went abroad when I was 19 and never returned to the United States. My mom said, I never should have put you on that airplane. You never wanted to come back. And I'm married to a Frenchman. We have 4 boys who are also global nomads living all over the world. And I even have a male dog and a lot of male critters. So I'm a woman in the household surrounded by a lot of wonderful men. And we have lived in Morocco for many years, in France, and now in Spain. We've been there 5 years. And I am a language teacher, a life and writing coach, a public speaker, and also a published author of 14 books. I have a series for kids and third culture kids, those stories of kids who are raised in countries and cultures that are not their passport countries. And I want, through my kids' books, for other children and families to be able to travel the world through my own boys' stories. And I also write a lot of poetry and memoir. My main topic right now for writing is on the topic of human trafficking, as I've collected stories as an Arabic translator in safe houses, collected stories of brokenness and trauma from survivors of human trafficking, one of the most horrific stories I've ever heard. And through my writing, through my stories, I want to be a voice to the voiceless, a voice to the silent ones. Through my stories and words on paper, I want to be able to help them tell their stories and raise awareness and prevention for them. So as an advocate of anti-human trafficking, fighting for these women on their journey to freedom. So that's my main passion right now and what brings me here into this space with you, April.
Thank you so much for being very succinct with all of those incredible stories and experiences. The power of story connects all of us. And so I'm curious, with this book, I'm going to pop the title up here, Our Journey to El Dorado. And this book really focuses in on the topic that you were talking about. And I just want to kind of focus in on this moment because how did this book really start? I mean, you shared a little bit about being an interpreter or understanding and translating some things. How do you find yourself in that place? And then listening to these stories, did you just stumble upon them? Were these purposeful interviews? Kind of share a little bit about the background for the book.
Yes, being in the work of anti-human trafficking was not at all on my radar. I had heard enough about human trafficking from a distance that I thought that's close enough for me. It was disturbing. But when I arrived in Spain, after having lived in Morocco, I speak Arabic, I know the culture. I was contacted out of the blue. It was a divine appointment, I do believe, looking back, that they contacted me and asked if I would be willing to come in and do translation for a Moroccan woman who had just been rescued out of the brothel, out of prostitution, and she couldn't speak a word of Spanish. And they said she can't tell her story. And when I heard that, I knew that I had to go. I thought, how could someone have their story of trauma, that broken story, stuck and trapped inside of them because they can't speak the language? And I thought, I have to go. But I remember on the way to the safe house that day, I wrestled with God and I said, okay, I'll go this one time, but I'm just afraid my heart's going to break going in there. And sure enough, it did. And that first woman I met is Habiba. So she's the one that I tell her story in our journey to El Dorado. And when I met her that day, I said, tell me your story. What brings you here? And as I listened to her story, she told me about her very hard life in Morocco. She was poor, among the poor of the poorest. She was illiterate. She couldn't read and write, uneducated. She lived in a small, isolated mountain village, and she was a widow. So in her Arab culture, as a widow, she was already stamped with shame. As a widow, she most likely would never marry again. She was an outcast. And she had one son, and she couldn't feed him because she didn't have enough money. So she went back home to live with her parents, and she was already stamped with shame, but going back home as a poor woman that can't feed her only child, she's stamped with shame anymore. She's just covered with shame. And she hears about a wonderful opportunity to pick strawberries in the fields of Spain. And I always say, if I were in Habiba's shoes, I would sign up too. And she did. And arriving, not being able to understand Spanish, I describe these women as being deaf and blind, and they don't have their paperwork. They can't understand. They don't know where they are. They are vulnerable, and they are really at the mercy of everyone and everything. And so the strawberry fields, those conditions are atrocious and inhumane. And out of the strawberry fields, Habiba's story is that she was lured, she was promised, she was deceived through lies that, oh, I know someone who can get you a better job, a nicer place to live, more money. I can even get you resident papers so you can stay in Spain long term. You can provide for your poor family back in Morocco. And I say again, if I were in Habiba's shoes, I would sign up too. And so Habiba, like many women lured off the strawberry field, she was dropped off that night in a brothel. And I say, outside of a miracle from God, a woman will not get out, because she arrives with a debt on her head, a debt that she can never pay. And if she ever tries to escape, run away, or if she ever tells the secrets of the trade, there will be death threats on her life, on her family, her children. And that's why women don't run. And so that's a little bit about Habiba's story. There's much more of her journey to freedom, but that's a little bit how it started. I was just called in one day to translate, and once I met Habiba, I could never walk out.
And that powerful understanding, and I'm sure the stories that she shared, there's probably times of pausing, as that heart breaks. And I'm interested to know, was this over a period of days, weeks that the interview happened? How did you collect the story?
So I was called in that day to do translation with the human rights lawyer. So when women are rescued, in Habiba's case, they collect the story. They want to find out what happened, and they then will present the story. If the woman wants to denounce, if she wants to turn in the perpetrator, they can go to the police and then they will come under international protection. In Habiba's case, she did not want to go to the police, so she just needed to tell her story so that it could get out because it was trapped inside. And she just needed to be able to tell someone what had happened. So in Habiba's case, we ended up meeting over the course of several weeks because her story was so traumatic. We could only do it in bite-sized pieces because she would always get to a place in her story, and the other women as well, where they would just say, I can't tell, I can't tell, I can't tell. And I have never, April, in my life, I have never seen such terror in a person's eyes. And I thought no one should have to live with that kind of fear. And there were times in her story where she would actually become faint and almost pass out from the trauma. And so we would have to stop, and then we would reconvene the following week. And when I started hearing her story, I had no intention of writing this book, no intention at all. But I would leave every day from the safe house and I would carry her story with me. I began to experience secondary trauma myself from hearing her story and the horrors of her experience. And so, because I've always been a writer since I was a little girl, writing was the only way I processed what was happening inside myself and what was happening in the world around me. And so I immediately went to the paper. I immediately pulled out my journal and began writing out her story. Almost, I describe it as needing to vomit her trauma out on the page. And little by little, as I wrote her story, it was during COVID, actually, when all this was happening, I began to feel very strongly in my heart that God was calling me to write her story and to tell her story to the world. And so one day I went to her and I said, I have to ask her permission. I even though I'll change her name, actually her name is not Habiba. That's a name that I have given her. It means beloved in Arabic, but it's not her actual name for security reasons. I changed locations in the book, but I still needed to ask her permission. And so one day I went to the safe house, took her out for ice cream. We were sitting out on the bench, watching the world go by, watching the people in Spain walk by. And I said, Habiba, do you know that most of the people around you, they don't know your story. They don't know who you are. They have no idea probably what is happening in the strawberry fields in their own country. We need to tell them your story. And she said, you mean the story from the strawberry fields and going into the brothel? Can it make a difference? Could it help? And I said, yes. What if it could save one woman? What if it could stop one depraved man from doing what he did to you? And she looked at me, and I will never forget the moment. She looked me straight in the eyes and she said, Marci, tell them my story. Tell them my story. And so that's what I did in this book. And at first, after hearing her story, I thought that her story was an isolated story. I thought she was just one Moroccan woman who had come to El Dorado. El Dorado is this idea of a land with streets paved of gold. People cross the Mediterranean Sea, much like they do maybe from Latin America coming into the United States. They cross the border thinking that they're going to arrive in this land of opportunity and wealth, but it's all a mirage. It's all an illusion. It's not true. And so for Habiba, that's what she thought. She thought she was coming here. And I thought she was the only one. I thought maybe she was the only one who was then lured off the strawberry fields into the brothel. But as the safe house kept calling me back to do more translation for the Moroccan women, I kept hearing story after story after story of Moroccan women, and their point of entry into Spain was through the strawberry industry, because Spain is the major supplier of strawberries for all of Europe. They call it red gold. It's a massive industry. So they need a lot of hands to pick strawberries. Strawberries grow on the ground. It's very hard work. Who wants to sign up for that? 10, 12 hours in the heat of Spain. And they have to bend over all day with a plastic rectangular basket, if you can imagine, strapped to their back. Because, like I said, strawberries grow on the ground. They don't grow on trees that are easy picking. And so this is hard labor. And the Spanish, they don't want to sign up for that. So they call in all of these immigrant workers. There's actually contract work between Spain and Morocco where they hire women every year, girls and women, to pick strawberries. And so I kept hearing these stories. And so I began calling these women the Strawberry Girls. And I started investigating, learning, interviewing people, trying to understand. And we have identified this traffic line between Morocco into the strawberry fields of Spain and then into the brothels. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about it through the Strawberry Girls Project. And we want to bring awareness not only for these women, not just for Habiba, but for all of the Habibas in the world. This is not just a problem on the other side of the ocean, on the other side of the globe. It's happening right here in the United States. It's happening all over the world. It's knocking at our door, and we have got to talk about it. We have got to be aware of it for here and for there.
Right. For all people. That was interesting when you said the story to help the women. This kind of makes me interested in why and how men feel the acceptance of this is fine. And on the other side of that, if it was their own daughter, they would be out pummeling these people. There's got to be awareness. The men out there in the world, any man who can hear my voice, your job of protection is real. And these women could use that and go pummel those men, sorry, that are doing these horrible things. And I know that there are other people involved, and I'm sure there are women who help to lure this in that it will be fine. I understand. But overall, the point is that we should want to protect, help, comfort the women as the victims. We race together and help and support. But the big change happens if men get involved. These stories you just have to imagine that's your daughter. What happens to the whole situation? It flips, and it flips fast. If this was your daughter, what would you do? And I just think, just in that call out, sorry, I felt a little moved there, but you said a deranged man who does these things. I don't know how we are raising our men to become so terrible, but I think it's our responsibility as women, and you have raised 4 boys, and thinking about their ability to love others and help others and protect. Their traveling, they're seeing all of these things around the world. They can become a part of it, or they can become a protector of it. And I'm sure with your work in sharing stories like this, her voice, even though it's labeled with a different name, the story and the impact are huge. And that's why this journey to El Dorado, those streets paved with gold, that understanding that we have within our communities ways to stop this. We can't look to someone there. We'll share the story tonight, and someone there will fix it. No, it is you within your own community, within your own small city. Look around. You will be shocked. As a public teacher, school teacher, I am shocked at how many girls and boys I know stuck within similar situations. This is just not okay. And the change has to happen the within the voice that you have within your community. And if more of us stand within a community, we get that out. So you have shared that this one area with these strawberry fields, the red gold, this is a huge challenge right there. So who within the community has stood up? I know you've published this book and you have others. How do you now reach out to children so that they are aware and can stand and can say no and can tell adults if something happens? Do you have books like that?
Yes, we want exactly what you're saying, April, to touch all of the community, all ages, all genders, because together as a community, and I'm talking the world community, we can disrupt this traffic line. We can disrupt the largest growing industry in the world of human trafficking. It is a $236 billion industry. This is huge. And you were just talking about men. We have to talk about women as well, who are consumers. And as long as there are consumers in regards to prostitution and human and sex trafficking, it will continue. But if we begin to educate, if we begin to scream from the mountaintops, if we begin to ring the alarm, we can disrupt. And our children as well. You know, this is a topic that we're afraid to talk to our children about, but we have to. Human trafficking is right here at our doorstep. I was just looking at 2024 statistics for the United States by state. I am from Missouri originally, and I was shocked to see that Missouri is third on the list for the number of human trafficking victims. This is everywhere. Every state is affected. Every city is affected. And so it's around us. Our children are exposed to it. And it's better that they hear from us than to hear about it in the world. We need to talk to our kids about this in a kid-friendly, age-appropriate way. And so I wrote, this is a book I wrote for children, a children's picture book called Mommy, What's a Safe House? A true story for children about human trafficking. This is a true conversation that took place between my 7-year-old at the time, he's 11 now, but my 7-year-old, because every week I was going to be with Habiba at the safe house. And one day he said, Mommy, what's a safe house? And I remember looking at my son and I thought, how do I answer this? Do I tell him he's too young to understand? We'll talk about it when he's 18, when he's an adult. Do I just avoid the question completely? I wanted to be able to speak truth and talk about hard topics even with my son. And so through a conversation, I was able to explain to him. I remember taking the sticker off, like the price tag sticker off of a water bottle, and I put it on his shoulder. And I said, just like you can walk into a grocery store to purchase a bottle of water, there are people that think that they can purchase a human being, a man, a woman, a boy, or a girl with a price tag for a couple of dollars. They can purchase them just like they would a bottle of water. And so I go through this whole story. I actually invite my son into the safe house. He goes with me. This actually happened, so it's a true story. He meets Habiba. He meets the other women, and he said, wow, they're just like my mom. He meets the other children and plays with them at the safe house. And he said, they're children just like me. And then he walks out saying, I want to make a difference. But in this book, in April, I have to mention that I refer to the safe house throughout all my work. I always mention and describe the safe house as a lighthouse. I don't know if you can see this image, but it talks about the safe house being a safe place, a lighthouse for those who can come in and receive God's love. And for Habiba, that was very much a part of her story. And I cannot forget to talk about this because your book that I read, Pinpoints of Light, Escaping the Abyss of Abuse. And this idea of in the darkness, there are these pinpoints of light to follow to freedom. And that was such a part of Habiba's story because in her darkness, in the brothel, God sent two women. They came in. She happened to be alone that day at the brothel, and they were donating food. And she felt led to tell them her story and to show them her bedroom, which was boarded up. All the windows were boarded up, and even the light fixture, the light bulb did not work. She was in torture and in darkness. And the women handed her a card and they said, if you want out to a safe place, call us. And in her story that she recounts to me, she said, I saw light in these women. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know if I could trust them. But she said, I saw light and I knew I needed to follow the light. And she was rescued the next day. She called. It was a very fast and furious mission. She was put in a car, driven to the other side of the country. And that's when I met her. She was brought into this safe house, a Christian safe house. And she said, I don't know who these people are. They love me. They're caring for me. They're protecting me. And she just was filled and received the love of God. And it radically changed her life. And I have to share that part of her story because it ties in so much with your book and your whole theme of lighthouse and these pinpoints of light that God sends in the darkness.
Thank you. That is so amazing how fast these two angels coming in and handing a card. And what's so interesting about those cards, I had a card that saved me as well. It's just this little bit of information with a phone number. And when we're brave enough to call and to do, I'm just, I have to put my, I'm so surprised. The next day saved amazing. Not years. I'm not saying that it couldn't have been years, but yay! Amazing
Yes.
to be
And the
saved.
courage, you just talked about someone being so brave to call that number and the courage and the faith. It's a huge risk for them to make that call and to run, not knowing even where they're going, but to run away from this place of darkness and slavery. And it is truly a journey of death to life and darkness to light and slavery to freedom. But these women who run, wow, what strength and courage they have. And they're such examples and models to me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marci, for sharing this with all of us tonight. Where can we get copies of all of your books? Especially, let me put the thing up here again. There we go. Our Journey to El Dorado. Where can we grab a copy of this book?
Okay, so all of our books are available on our website, which is www.strawberrygirls.org. And I wish that time allowed, but our project has grown into a very large endeavor. So we've created a nonprofit association, and I'm working very closely with a professional artist, Kim Peters. She's wonderful. You can read all about her and our project on our website. But we have a poetry book with Kim's black and white sketches. In this particular book, this is available on Amazon and on our website as well. But our most beautiful book just came off. It came off the press. Literally, it's still hot off the press in my in my hands. This is a full color art book, which includes all of Kim's. There are 83, like I'm talking incredible, beautiful images. I don't know if you can see this, but it's incredible.
Yes.
And yes, this tells the entire journey. The sliced strawberry is significant because it's Morocco, the strawberry fields of Spain, into the brothels, into the safe houses, those lighthouses, and then into freedom and thriving. And so these books will soon be available as well on Amazon and our website as soon as we get them up. But yes, lots of different resources that tell the story of the Strawberry Girls.
It is such hope to go out there. what can a pinpoint of light do? Focus you in a direction away from darkness.
Yes.
That's it. And your work with these women and capturing the stories and sharing them out. I pray that people who've been watching here very actively tonight, I must say as well, which has been fantastic, please share this. We need to help stop. We need to support these people. We need to support these women. Grab those copies on Amazon as well as on the website. So tell me the website again, please.
Okay, so it's www.strawberrygirls.org.
Awesome. So please grab these things because the support there, it these books, they're not hundreds of dollars. They're just, $10, $15, $20. And the point of it, we have that. We can support. And this helps to share more stories, get more awareness, and with that, disrupt, right? She said to shout it out
Yes.
from the mountain. Well, disruption really puts more people into those safe houses and freedom and stops more from going in out of desperation, out of porn, and all of those things. We want to infuse light and hope and not fire up desperation and all of that. That needs to be set aside. We need to be the ones to help turn on that light and help these women because the stories, even if it is one, really changes lives. So thank you for being an incredible guest tonight, Marci.
Thank you, April.
You're welcome. And please go out and grab these on Amazon. Again, her website, www.strawberrygirls.org, and protect, help, proclaim it, whatever we can do. Marci, at the end here, is there anything else you would like to say before we close it up?
If you could just remember that every 30 seconds, there is a new victim of human trafficking. So if you can think of, if you were to just count, maybe we can just pause for these last 30 seconds and just imagine that in these 30 seconds of silence that we will have, that there is one new human trafficking victim. We have to talk about this. We have to disrupt this. So we'll just end with 30 seconds of silence.
Thank you, Marci. Everyone, we will see you again next week on the Beacon of Light podcast. Share that hope and light. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.